Welcome to another Holistic 3D tutorial on YouTube. Now what I'm going to do in this series is to teach you how to create this, and what you're looking at here is an interactive shader. So we're going to create a shader in Shader Graph that will interact with the sphere here and actually move the grass out of the road as you move it around. To follow along, you're going to need the resource file. It's available on my website to download, and once you've got hold of that, I will continue on showing you what to do. Okay, so we're going to open up a new Unity project. Now I'm doing this in Unity 2021.3 with the version of Shader Graph that comes with that, which is the latest version at this time. And what we're going to do to create the proper type of project is to go New Project. Then once this window pops up here where you can select the type, you want to set this editor version to 2021.3. And then we're going to create a universal render pipeline version of this. So you want to come down and grab this one here, 3D universal render pipeline, and make sure you give it a name. Hit that, then hit create project. Okay, so I'll call this interactive grass, and let's select that one and hit create. Okay, this will take a little while. Once that window's up and going, I'll be back. Okay, once you've got your scene together, I'm just going to put this into my window mode that I like. So Penny's shader window mode like this. So the hierarchy's down here, the inspector is up here. I've got lots of window space for putting in the shader graph. Now once we're actually in here, we want to make sure that we can see the inspector for our particular scene. So let's go down to the sample scene there, and notice in here you've got your main camera and your directional light and the global volume. Now this global volume is for special effects and things like that. We don't actually need it in this particular case, so we can just delete it because it gives us a little gizmo on the screen. It just gets in the road of things. So once we've done that, you can save your scene if you like, but then we're going to go into the assets folder and drag in our grass Unity package that you would have downloaded from my resources website. So let's bring that in and drag and drop it in there. Now while we're doing this, if you're interested in getting hold of the solution for this project, remember that all Patreons of mine get that for free, so you can have a look at it on the Patreon website. Okay, so we've got in here a grass image, a grass model, a green material, and the actual scene itself. So let's import that, and we will open up our interactive grass scene. And in fact, as I said before, you could rename this. We don't actually need that scene, so we won't save it, and we will just move on to this one here. Now this won't have the global volume in it. Okay, so in here what you're seeing is the grass. Now this is where the grass is going to be, so it's just kind of two billboards that we'll put this grass texture on, and we have our sphere, which is going to become the object that we can move around, which will make the grass actually bend around it as we go. So let's start on creating the material for our actual grass here. So we want to come down into our assets folder, and we're going to go create, and we're going to grab hold of material, create a new material. Let's call that grass, and then we're going to drag and drop that grass onto this here, okay, these two planes. And if we have a look over in the inspector, you'll see that there is a grass material on there. Now we want to set that grass material to use our grass that we're going to create in Shader Graph. To do that, we're going to right click in the assets, create, come up to Shader Graph, go over to URP. We're after a lit shader graph, so just click on that. Once that comes up down in the project window, we can call that our grass shader. Okay, now it's created. Once you've done that, we can set our link to our grass material here. So if you click on your material for grass and then we just come up in the top of the inspector. We can go shader, and we will set it to shader graph. Click on that and you'll find grass shader come up immediately in there. Okay, that will make your grass go this sort of dull grey colour, and that's okay because we actually haven't created a shader yet, but we have our empty grass shader file ready to go, and once we start modifying it, you'll see those effects come through on here. Okay, so now to actually create our shader graph, we're going to open up our grass shader. So double click on that, and we're going to get that popping up in here. Now this particular shader has to be double-sided because grass, using those two billboards to get the full effect, you need to see the image on both sides. Come over to the graph inspector. Let's scroll down a little bit here, and we can find where we've got our render face, and we're just going to set that to both. Okay, right, so we've got that. Let's now also set the surface type to be transparent because the image we're going to use has transparency on it. Okay, so we've got that. That's fine. We can just roll that graph inspector away. What I should say also, while we're in here, and the reason I'm actually creating this series is to publicize my new shader graph course, which is coming out, which will teach you how to create shaders in shader graph from scratch. So this is an advanced subject, creating this shader, but I'm going to go over it so that you can actually put it together yourself. If you want a deeper understanding of what really is going on, then I do highly recommend that you have a look at my shader graph course for Unity, as it will reveal all the mystique that might be going on that I don't have time to go through in here. Okay, so we're going to start by putting the color or the actual texture for the grass onto our model. So we'll bring it in. This is our grass image that I gave you. If you just drag and drop it into shader graph, it'll give you a sample texture 2D. The grass texture goes into this input of the sample texture 2D node, and you can change that to whatever image you like. Now what we're going to do with this is actually feed the colors, so the RGBA, through to the base color of our object, and you'll see it come up in the main preview like this. And we want the alpha value from this image to be our alpha value down here, so just set that there. And then if we have a look in our main preview, we'll have the transparency already going on in there. Okay, so let's just save this quickly and we'll zip back into our scene and have a look at our grass now that it has been properly rendered with that image. Okay, so you can see it there, and it's on both sides of the image, and it gives you a really good idea of grass, or a sort of fake idea of grass. Okay, now see on the back side here, you can see the texture, but it's quite shiny. Now this is the way that the light is coming from. Now we can fix it if we go into our grass shader here and actually turn down this smoothness value. It'll stop the white glary bits at the back. So if you put that down to like maybe even 0, really, grass isn't particularly shiny at all. So if we get rid of it like that, that's going to now fix that texture in place. Okay, so just save it, switch back into Unity, have another quick look at the grass, and that's going to look much better. Remember, this is going to be en masse across this whole plane, which will make it look like really thick grass. Okay, let's now plant this grass everywhere on this surface. To start with, we need to make this into a prefab. So grab hold of the grass in the hierarchy and just drag and drop it into your assets folder and click on original prefab, so that we now have our grass prefab just down here. You might want to rename it so that you don't get it mixed up with other things. So prefab, like that. Okay, and now we're going to make a script to actually plant this grass. So right click, create C# script. Now don't worry if you're not that familiar with coding, this is going to be quite simple coding. We're going to call this create grass. Okay, so once you've done that, if you double click on it, it's going to open up in Visual Studio for you, which is what gets installed with Unity. Okay, so here is our code. We have to get the prefab into the code so that we can make lots of copies of it. So I'm going to create a public game object grass prefab, and then inside of the start we'll actually plant that grass. In fact, let's put a variable at the top here to say how big we're going to make our grass square. So public int grass size, and we'll initially set that to say 20. Just be careful how big you make this, because it make your program run quite slow if you add lots and lots. So we're going to have a 20 by 20 patch of grass. So let's go for int z is equal to -20, and that case it's actually negative grass size, and then z is less than or equal to 20, and then z plus plus. Okay, once we've done that, we'll do the same thing in the x direction. So let's just grab that line, put it down here, and make this x and x and x. And I can see I should have used grass size for this 20 here as well. Grass size and grass size. Okay, let's just finish off these squiggly brackets, and then inside of here we're going to go vector 3 position for the grass equals a new vector 3, and in here we'll put x divided by 4.0f. So we're putting these at like 0.25 meters apart is where we're actually planting them in this case, because x is going to go up by 1 each time and we're dividing it by 4. Then the y value would be 0, and then the z value is going to be z divided by 4.0f, like that. Okay, these should be commas. I've actually been programming a lot in Python, so I get everything confused. Not that Python uses for loops like this either. So game object grass equals instantiate grass prefab position, and then quaternion dot identity for the rotation. Okay, and at the same time I'm also going to say that the grass dot transform dot local scale is going to be set to a nice random value for the height. So new vector 3, keep the x the same width, then we'll put random dot range, and in here 0.8f to 1.2f, just to give it a little bit of height variability across that whole grid of grass, and then 1 just there. Okay, once we've got that, just save it. Now we'll switch back into Unity. We're going to come down and attach that grass script to the ground plane, which is over here. So just get it and drag and drop it onto the ground. Select the ground, and you'll see at the bottom that that script has now come up. It's after a grass prefab, and our grass prefab is this one that we created before. So just drag that over into grass prefab. This grass is no longer needed, so we can select it in the hierarchy and just delete it out of there. Okay, so when we press play, our script is going to take the prefab and create that many lots of grass, and you can see them all going on here. If I go back into the scene, we'll be able to see them a little bit better. Okay, so see how thick that grass is. Now if we zoom out a little bit and have a look, you'll see that it's a variable height. It's only very small, the change in that height that we've made. The other issue you're going to see is the grid of grass, because we've got it planted perfectly in 25 centimeter lots. So we can also make that a little bit random. Let's pop back into the code. If you want to change that height variability, you can change these values here around the value of 1. So maybe 0.5 and 1.5. That might give you a fair bit of variability. But you can also add some variability to the x and the z values. So in here we can just go plus random.range, and you might go between negative 0.25 f and 0.25 f for there. And also we could do the same thing, copy that and add it to the z value as well. Okay, so let me put this down on the next line so you can see what I'm doing with that. Save it, back into Unity, And let's press play again once that compiles. And that should get rid of all those little grids. Not that it's an issue for what we're trying to do at the moment, but it does just make it look a little bit more natural. Okay, so now if we just rotate up and have a look at what we've got in the scene view, of course. Okay, you can see that planting is much scattered. Now from up this point, it does look pretty bare, and you could put them closer together or make bigger sort of pieces of grass, but this is going to work nicely for the shader effect that we want to put on it. Okay, so that's the end of part 1. When we come back in the next part, we'll start by getting some wind effects going through our grass so it sways back and forward. If you'd like to support our work, like us on YouTube, visit our website holistic3d.com, look for our courses on holistic3dlearn.com, or support us on Patreon.